Hello, and welcome to IRI Growth Insights C-Suite Conversations. I'm your host, Joan Driggs, Vice President of Content and Thought Leadership here at IRI. IRI leverages forward-looking insights to help companies in the CPG, retail, healthcare, and media markets grow their business. Our purpose is to reinvent how people make decisions, take action, and optimize performance by unifying technology, analytics, and data. At IRI, we're about smarter decisions, faster actions, and exceptional performance. As part of that effort, we regularly share our thought leadership with the industry at large, addressing and tackling the most pressing challenges and opportunities within our industry. Our special C-Suite Conversation series features notable leaders talking about the future of CPG and retail. In this episode, we're talking with Tim Cofer, Chief Executive Officer, Central Garden & Pet, a leader in the lawn and garden and pet industries with 65 plus brands, including Pennington, KT, Aquion, Nylabone, Cadet, Amdro, Fairy Morse, and many more. While CPG in general has seen tremendous growth since the outset of the pandemic, the pet industry has been exceptional, given the increase in pet adoption and ownership as Americans settle in at home and turn to their furry or scaly or feathery friends for comfort and activity. Further, we know that Americans have been investing in their homes throughout the pandemic, and Tim will tell us about the investments we're making in beautifying our yards. As CEO of Central Garden & Pet, Tim is uniquely qualified to walk us through this boon to the pet industry, the supply chain challenges, as well as growth strategies for these complicated businesses. Central Garden & Pet's myriad brands generate $3.3 billion in sales globally, doing business in the US, Canada, and Europe. Tim's 30 plus years of consumer packaged goods experience includes Chief Growth Officer of Mondelez International, President of Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Africa for Mondelez, President of Kraft Foods Europe, President of Kraft Pizza Company, and President of Oscar Mayer Foods. Leading today's conversation is Davey, IRI's President of Client Engagement, and Russ Dunham, Executive Vice President of our Strategic Solutions Group. With that as background, it's my pleasure to turn it over to KK and Russ.
Welcome, Tim. We typically ask our panelists, what your favorite is. If with an ice cream manufacturer, what's your favorite brand? With you, typically we would have started with, hey, do you favor a dog or a cat? But I did look at your website and understood you have a Maltese Shih Tzu named Toblerone or Toby. The question then is really, did Toby join your family pre-pandemic or during the pandemic?
Great to see you, KK and Russ. Thanks for having me today. And indeed, the fifth member of our family is a little guy named Toblerone. As you said, he's a Malshi, a Maltese Shih Tzu. He actually joined us shortly before the pandemic, about to turn 5. But pets have always been a part of my life. I've had pets since I was a young boy. I've had dogs, I've had cats, I've had fish, I've had reptiles. And, that's one of many reasons why I'm so excited these last few years to be a part of the pet industry. And actually, I'm talking to you today from my home office. And while off camera, I can assure you right down here, Toby is at my feet and enjoys participating from afar in all my video calls.
That's right. That become a part of the life these days, right?
Yeah.
Cats and dogs show up in a bunch of Zoom calls and team calls. Tim, you joined Central Garden & Pet just ahead of the pandemic. And you came from the CPG, more classical craft and companies like that. What drew you to Central Garden & Pet? Sure.
Well, as you said, first I've had the good fortune to spend all 30 years of my career in CPG and in classic consumer products. And, at its core, I'm passionate about leading great companies, building iconic brands, developing people and teams, and most importantly, driving shareholder value. And when I had the opportunity to look at this role as CEO of Central Garden & Pet, a number of things attracted me. First, the industries. As we just talked a minute ago, pets have always been a part of my life. And I think the pet industry is a fabulous industry, dynamic, high consumer engagement, a great growth industry. And at the same time, I happen to be an avid gardener. I've got quite a bit of land and spend a lot of time on beautifying my outdoor spaces, as so many American consumers do. And so the personal fit, for starters, with these two industries, garden and pet, was very strong. Beyond that, in terms of this particular platform, Central, I saw a strong foundation for growth. The company's been around for over 40 years. It's got a leading portfolio on both the garden and pet side, demonstrated strength in the financials, a nice track record on M&A. And M&A and the opportunity for acquisitions is something that's been a part of my career and one that I'm excited of continuing here. This company had great relationships with key customers, good manufacturing and distribution network, and importantly, a terrific team. So for all those reasons, I was excited to join. I've been here a little less than 3 years, and I can say that I'm very happy with the choice and look forward to a bright future with Central.
So, where do you want to take Central, garden, and pet?
Sure. When I joined the company a few years back, we were at about $2.5 billion in sales. We'll approximate by the end of this year closer to $3.5 billion. So, obviously making this company bigger, better, and stronger through both organic growth and through M&A is a key part of it. So there's a lot of financial ambitions, and quite honestly, and I've been public about this. Obviously, we're a publicly traded Fortune 800 company. My ambition is to double and redouble this business, and I think we can do that. And we're well on our way in the first few years since I've joined. Beyond that, it's about building a great place to work for our today 7,400 colleagues, really creating, fulfilling careers, rewarding careers for people who are passionate. Almost every individual in our company are really passionate about these two categories and have personal affinity to it. So it's a combination of financial ambitions to grow this company, and as well, the softer side of making this a great place for our employees and delivering on a broader purpose that we can talk about as part of our new strategy to nurture happy and healthy homes.
It's wonderful. Tim, you said you joined about 3 years ago, and many CEOs, who started 3 years, 2.5 years ago, were suddenly faced, even as they were getting used to their companies with the pandemic and the shutdowns. So, what are some of the changes you had to quickly make to adapt to the new world? And how did you and your management team, take the initial shock days of the pandemic?
Sure. Well, of course, as you say, KK, I mean, who could have predicted such a massive curveball at a human level just a few years ago with the COVID pandemic? For us, like I'm sure a lot of companies, two clear priorities out of the gates. Number one, the health and safety and well-being of our colleagues. And number two, business resilience, the opportunity to keep our operations running despite the uncertainty, particularly in the early days of the pandemic. And so, right from the start, these have been our two focus areas. I'm so proud and I'm so inspired of the men and women here at Central Garden and Pet and the way that they've approached this with tenacity and perseverance and commitment and loyalty. I'm pleased to say throughout the pandemic, our business has stayed fully operational, our manufacturing facilities, our distribution centers, and we were, I would say, pleased to be recognized as an essential business early in the pandemic, given the important role that pets play and that gardens play in consumers' lives in a lockdown kind of home environment. And so those were our early focus areas. In addition to that, we took the opportunity, given that pandemic curveball, to really step back and reassess our long-term strategy. And so we spent the better part of that first year in 2020 doing a deep situation assessment, We took 6 to 9 months to really understand our history, our strengths, our development opportunities, the changing dynamics, all leading to a new strategy that we then unveiled with an investor day and have subsequently talked about the last year and a half or so. And maybe later in this call, I can unpack that strategy. But that was the other key element of, trying to respond to this very fundamental dynamic with the pandemic.
Yeah, I think with the home becoming the center of everyone's lives, particularly in 2020 and early 2021, and the surge in demand, and there must have been a big surge in demand for your products. How did you and your management team deal with the adoption, the significant adoption in pets, and also the focus on home?
No doubt. So, while certainly the pandemic, for starters, took a significant toll, at a human level, we were certainly not immune. A good percent in keeping with the broader national and international trends of our employees were impacted by it. So a lot of hardships and challenges, and we can talk more about that later. But as you say, KK, fundamentally, it also created a huge demand tailwind for our two categories. And as you said, KK, that manifested in, on the pet side, a significant increase in pet adoptions, which is obviously very good for our business. And so we saw in both industries, when you talk about household penetration, we saw north of a 300 basis point increase in household penetration in both pets and in gardening. If you talk about buy rate or annual spend per consumer, something that IRI knows well, over these last couple of years, you're seeing that buy rate or annual spend per consumer over these last 2 years increase on a 2-year stack in the 30% plus range, 30 to 35%. Yeah. So significant favorable tailwinds in pet adoption, in lawn and garden behavior, in household penetration, and in buy rate. And that's been terrific for our business. That's one of the reasons why in fiscal 20 and in fiscal 21, we printed double-digit top line and bottom line results, and we printed 2 consecutive years of record results. With that, of course, came its share of challenges. When you have that level of surge in demand, that does put pressure on your supply chain. And as appropriate, we could talk more about that.
Yeah, no, let's dive right into it, because that's the hottest topic these days, right? All the supply challenges, every industry is facing it, and would love to kind of understand a little bit as to how you dealt with it and how your management team is still dealing with it, I assume.
Yeah, and you're right there at the end. It's not over. We're still dealing with it, to be sure. I think broadly, if you step back, the shadow side of all of this wonderful increase in demand, both at an industry level and for our winning brands, was felt by our supply chain. And it started showing up late in 2020, and then it continues through to this day. And fundamentally, we're talking about cost input pressure. So think key commodities, everything from things like wheat and agri commodities, commodities into our wild bird, grass seed, etc., through to freight. Obviously, but we're all seeing what's going on with oil, the price of gas, domestic transportation, ocean freight. We obviously bring in a percentage of our products from outside this country, and that ocean freight cost was skyrocketing. Labor cost. I mean, we've seen we're not immune to the increases in labor, and we've had to make a number of labor adjustments, particularly to our hourly employees across manufacturing and distribution. And so, that plus, as I said earlier, job one was the health, well-being, and safety of our employees, and that required a higher cost envelope to ensure we're covering that. So higher costs. And then the other is, quite candidly, and something I'm not proud of, but it's true, and we're public on this as well, compromised service levels to our customers. So our service levels were impacted significantly. Who could have predicted this type of surge in demand? And of course, we've responded to that. We're not sitting on our hands, and that is really an unprecedented investment in CapEx. We more than doubled our CapEx in 20 versus 19. We continued at that pace in 21. We are installing incremental capacity as well as automation to improve the efficiency of our installed capacity across countless facilities, from dog bones to fish tanks to pet bedding to grass seed and to bird feed. We're installing incremental capacity. So our service levels are still not at historic levels. You always want to be at that, ideally 100%, but certainly in the upper 90s. And we're still not there, but we're on our way and we're making progress. But no doubt significant supply chain challenges.
Yeah, and I assume assortment reduction, given the variety of categories that you're playing in.
Yes, sir, KK. That's right. I mean, like I think a lot of my peers, we did, an ABC analysis to understand, obviously, what are the key drivers and really focus on those A SKUs, those SKUs that drive the majority of the volume, the majority of the shelf space. Wanted to be sure our supply chain fulfilled those first. And we had to make some tough choices in our C SKUs to either fully rationalize them or let our customers and consumers know that for at least a period of time, they would be either unavailable or limited availability.
Two more questions. When do you see supply challenges moderating? I'm talking purely not from a pricing perspective, just availability and getting the right product, right commodities, right ingredients to make your products. Do you see an end in sight?
Yes, I think in a word, yes. Obviously difficult to have the crystal ball, particularly with the type of diversified portfolio that I have the privilege to lead here. But I would say broadly, KK, we are thinking it's the end of this year, the end of somewhere between the end of our fiscal, which is September 30, or the end of the calendar year. So call it fall or year end. We are going to be in a position where our service level to our customers is restored back to historic level. But with the changing dynamics, recent geopolitical developments like we've seen in Ukraine and Russia, there's always the chance for another curveball out there.
Other question is, has this accelerated your digitization efforts across the company? Right. I mean, you did talk a little bit about automation, but could you talk a little bit more about digitization? If there are efforts to digitize, entire processes and systems and the way you do business.
No doubt. So, if you step back just broadly and say, the changes afoot around our evolution towards a digital world is having a profound impact, obviously, on our consumers' lives and on our company. And so for us, we do think about it. I think as a company that has historically been built around brick and mortar distribution strength, it has been a pivot for this company, but it's a key part of our central to home strategy. And so that means taking a digital first mindset in everything we do, as you say, whether that's processes and systems internally, whether that's the enhanced use of robotics in our manufacturing and distribution facilities. In the last 3 weeks, I've been at 3 different of our business units. I was at a business unit earlier in this week in the Virginia area. It's actually our live goods, our live plants business on the garden side. And who would think that, for live plants, think everything from roses to hydrangeas to begonias, shrubs and trees and so on, that, digitization would play a role there. And yet we've invested significantly in a series of state-of-the-art robotics that allow us to cut and plant seedlings to significantly enhance, I'm talking 300, 400, 500% improvement in efficiency of planting seedlings, which weeks later become plants that we can then sell to you and consumers across the US. So we're investing significantly in the digitalization of our supply chain through things like robotics. And then on the consumer facing side and the customer side, clearly the explosive growth of e-commerce has been something that has only accelerated in the COVID pandemic. And it's an area of real focus for me and for Central Garden and Pet.
You mentioned you've gone through a deep assessment and you've set some targets of doubling and redoubling revenue. Late 20, you mentioned briefly your central to home strategy. Can you tell us a little more about the framework of that?
Absolutely, Russ. That's something I'm really proud of and really excited about. And one of the reasons, just to start, is because this is a strategy, as I like to say, that is created by Central for Central. This is not a top-down couple of guys in the corner office or a couple of high-paid consultants coming up with a strategy. We really stepped back, as I mentioned earlier, Russ, took 6 to 9 months. I involved over 150 key leaders across the company, coast to coast, across business units and function, to co-create this strategy. And that's why I think it'll stand the test of time, at least for the next few years. Fundamentally, what is that strategy? Well, I think a great strategy starts with a purpose. And, our purpose as a publicly traded business is obviously to make money, but a great purpose goes beyond making money and creating shareholder value. And for us, we landed on this concept, whether you're in garden or pet, selling dog treats, grass seed, bird feed, pet beds, it's to nurture happy and healthy homes. And I think in the COVID pandemic, we saw that even more, as KK said. Consumers really seeing home as a place of comfort and joy, and pets play a big role in that, and so do your outdoor lawn and garden spaces. So it starts with an inspiring purpose to nurture happy and healthy homes. Then we've got a mission, as any good strategy would, and it's to lead the future of the pet and garden industries, which is a bold ambition. It requires us to think differently, to stay agile, to be very consumer centric, to understand the trends and where the puck is going, to stay in front of the digital revolution, as KK asked earlier. But we have a clever turn of phrase. We say, lead the future of pet and garden, one blade of grass and one wagging tail at a time. And that's the concept of, it's a journey, guys. This is a day by day thing. We won't get there, overnight. Every employee counts, every day counts, every case counts, every idea counts. This inclusive notion of bringing everyone into the mission that you can play a role. And then we've got 5 key strategies, and I'll keep it as short as possible here, but to help our employees with kind of memorability around it, they all conveniently start with the letter C, and they are consumer, customer, central, portfolio, cost, and culture. And if I spend a few seconds on each, starts with the consumer. This is about a call out to build and grow brands consumers love. This is about deeply understanding our consumers, building distinctive and winning brands, creating disruptive innovation platforms. Quite honestly, Russ and KK, this is an area where my company, Central Garden and Pet, has been underdeveloped. We've been less advanced in consumer relative to some of the companies I've worked with in the past in big CPG. So it's an area of opportunity, consumer. Second strategy, all around the customer, and this is around winning with winning customers and channels. And this is everything from building sales capabilities, responding to channel shifts, and the imperative to win in e-commerce. And we can talk more about e-commerce later. Third pillar is central, talking about our central portfolio. This is about having a good portfolio strategy, understanding that different brands and categories play different roles. It's also the home of our M&A strategy, which is critical to our past and to our future. I've bought 4 companies in the last 2 years and plan to continue to add to that. Fourth strategy is cost, and this is about reducing costs to build our margins and to fuel our growth, to invest back in consumer and customer. This is about continuous improvement, net productivity, cost excellence, and really scale and collaboration efforts. And the fifth and final C is culture, arguably the most important, building a winning culture, attracting, retaining, developing the best. And really for us, and I think one of the cool parts of Central, it's about an entrepreneurial business unit led culture. We're not a monolith at Central. We're very proud to have today, we have 24 business units that roll up into garden and pet. And we really like to nurture that entrepreneurial, agile ownership in our BUs. So that's the summary of our strategy, and we're excited about it.
Really terrific. And I'm sure the fact that you've got so many leaders and others involved will pay dividends, because it's not your strategy, it's everyone's. That's really terrific. You mentioned you acquired 4 companies last year. I think you have about 65 brands, and we know that Pennington and Nylabone are 2 of your biggest brands. Those were acquisitions. How do you stay agile? Because that was another thing you mentioned. How do you stay agile through so many brands and an acquisition strategy?
Sure. As you say, and you got the number right, we've got, of significance, 65 brands. So that's a pretty wide portfolio. I'm definitely of the view that every single brand we own has the opportunity and, quite honestly, the obligation to grow. And so, I'd say there's a bit of a reinvigoration in terms of portfolio role here, that every single brand that we've got needs to find their growth strategies, needs to find their channels of opportunity, their innovation opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. Having said that, there are, tiers of brands, and we've got, give or take 10 brands that are, more what you might consider power brands, that are the largest brands. These are brands like Pennington, like Nylabone, KT, Ferry Morse, et cetera, Cadet. And so you will see more of our resources focus on those, but have an expectation that everyone comes to the growth party. As it relates to M&A, M&A is a really important part of that overall equation. As mentioned, we've had the privilege to welcome 4 new businesses in the last 2 years. By way of quick review, those are Green Garden, which is America's largest seed packet business. Think flowers, herbs, vegetables, et cetera. Next is Do My Own, which is a really cool new platform. That's actually an e-tailer. So that is a e-commerce direct-to-consumer provider of lawn and garden and pest control products. The third is Hopewell, which was a Hopewell Nurseries, an exciting addition to our live plants or live goods platform with Bell. And the fourth was D&D, which is a leading premium provider in the wild bird feed categories. That's a nice addition to our existing wild bird. So all 4 happen to be on the garden side. That's not necessarily by strategic intent. We continue to fish on both the garden and the pet side, but all 4 are great new additions. Each of them bring unique capabilities, which is a key part of it. They bring talented management teams, and they bring some synergy opportunities to the overall platform.
So you've mentioned e-commerce a couple of times, including the acquisition of an e-tailer. Can you tell us more about what's the size of your e-commerce business? What do you see happening as it evolves?
Yeah, well, as both you gentlemen know, I mean, e-commerce is the fastest growing channel. And it is one that if you do not figure out winning strategies for your business to grow in e-commerce, you're going to be a dinosaur pretty quickly. And we recognize that, and as part of our strategy from, that we co-created back during the pandemic, that is a critical part of our investment thesis going forward. So if we take our 2 industries, pet and garden, I'll start with pet. For pet, it's already a huge part of the business. So today, of our total pet consumer business, you're talking between 20 and 25% of our revenue is sold through the e-commerce channel. That might be omni-channel players, like Walmart or PetSmart, or pure play players like Amazon, and in the case of pet, Chewy, which is a great e-tailer, as you know, in e-commerce. That's a business that we saw huge double-digit growth in both of the pandemic years, and now we're beginning to lap that and seeing more single-digit growth. But that's one that's going to ramp heavily. I think a lot of industry experts, and I would agree, would say that that could be 50% of the total pet business here in the next few years. So it's an area of significant investment for us as we think about our digital marketing, as we think about our innovation, and certainly our resource allocation in e-commerce. So that's pet, big. In garden, it plays less of a role. It's underdeveloped relative to pet. Part of the reason I'm sure you gentlemen could recognize, and that is, you think about some of the garden products, 20-pound bag of bird seed or grass seed. Some of the shipping economics for customers as well as suppliers are a little bit more challenging, and consumers themselves still are haven't yet made the complete migration relative to going to that lawn and garden center and seeing what they need. Having said that, it's in the single-digit % of garden business today, and it's rapidly growing, fastest growing channel. So last year, our business, like I said, about mid-single digit of our total portfolio on garden, but it grew triple digits versus prior year off that small base. And we expect that to continue. So really important part of the business, and one that we're investing in significantly.
Can you say just a bit more about the digital marketing piece?
Sure. I talked about our strategy, the 5 C's, starting with the consumer. And this is a key part of that consumer strategy, and one I'm excited about. When you think about the role of digital, from brand building and digital marketing excellence through to the way that we approach our innovation. It's also an area, Russ, where we've made significant investments in new hires. So over the last year or two, we have brought in, a new chief marketing officer, a new head of digital marketing, a new head of DTC, a new head of e-commerce on both the garden and the pet side. Significant staffing underneath around digital and digital business development. So it's a key part of our strategy. We're putting our money where our mouth is with regard to talent and bringing in an influx of really more digitally native leaders. And in terms of focus areas, to your question, Russ, in terms of digital marketing, it's things like maybe 3 to cite. One is building winning in-house content development capability. That's an area where we've been, I would say, underdeveloped at Central historically, and both you gentlemen know the importance of that to win the buy box in the competitive digital marketing world. Enhanced performance marketing in the digital space, and then finally beginning to build out our direct-to-consumer capabilities. It's nascent in our company today. It's a very small %, but we know it's where the puck's going, and it's an area of investment.
I think that's spot on. I had a chance to meet Mark Cuban at a charity event about 1.5 years ago, and I briefly stood with him and I said to him, if you had one thing to tell me, I have a team of about 45, what would it be? He said, hire a 25-year-old and have them tell you what you should be doing.
Yeah, good advice from Mark.
You have a variety of categories and brands, as we discussed. Could you give us some examples of some innovative things you've done to kind of vary your go-to-market strategies for a brand versus another brand?
Well, as you look at the two industries we compete in, there are meaningful differences that, to your question, KK, dictate different go-to-market strategy. So maybe on this one, I'll start on the garden side. And if you think about garden is really dominated as an industry in the leading mass merch player and the 2 leading home center players. So, those 3, which we call the big 3, and a lot of our peers and competitors in lawn and garden refer to them as the big 3. Those 3 dominate lawn and garden. I'm talking, kind of 75% of the total business. Mm-hmm. So when you think about go-to-market strategy, it starts with ensuring you're going to win with the big 3. And I'd say the biggest shift associated with those 3 is the way they've embraced omni-channel as the winning play. And so they've invested significantly in their online channel, in pick, pack, and ship capability, in pushing some of the burden to suppliers on direct fulfillment to consumer, on ensuring you've got winning content on their sites. And the merchants themselves, the buyers now, really, I've seen, even in the last 3 years since taking this chair, I've seen the buyers and the merchants themselves put omni-channel and digital marketing and e-com fulfillment at the forefront of line reviews and portfolio decisions. And whereas in the past it was a nice side hobby, so to speak. So that's really key on the garden side, and that means that's everything from how we curate that assortment, recognizing the importance of full omni-channel winning strategies, how we innovate, how we market, how we price, all of that. On the pet side, it is about a pet specialty. So think of the couple of big box pet specialty players here in the US. It's about the pure play players. Amazon and Chewy are both big ones, obviously. And then a lot of fragmented mom and pop pet specialty stores in your hometown and in Russ's hometown. There may be one or two. So one of the areas where I think our go-to-market strategy differs from some of our competitors is we're actually also a leading distributor. And so on the pet side, we run a pet distribution business where we not only fulfill and merchandise our products, central manufactured and marketed products, but also third-party products. And that gives us a certain source of competitive advantage in terms of we've got that relationship that's enhanced with pet specialty, both big box and independent. And we do the merchandising all the way through. That also gives us exposure to what's selling, not just from our shop, but in other shops. What are the trends? What are consumers migrating to? And so we use our distribution. By the way, I didn't mention on garden, we have the same on garden. So we have a vendor partner business and a third party, and we've got strong merchandising in store. We have feet on the street on the garden side that goes into the likes of Lowe's and Depot and Walmart, as well as on the pet side that actually merchandise product and helps build displays and set shelves. So those are some of the things that make Central Garden and Pet different, and I think when properly harnessed, give us a source of competitive advantage.
The proportion of e-commerce would be different, right? You said pet could be as high as 50. Here, I assume it's less because of the bulkiness in terms of home and garden.
Yeah, so the 50 number I told you is a future-looking
Is
number.
the future. Yeah.
Today, for our pet business, it's in the mid-20s%, of our total business. Whereas on the garden, it's a single-digit number. So to your point, KK, underdeveloped on the garden side relative to pet.
Yeah, and managing both of these, right? What kinds of analytic tools, data do you use to help inform decisions? You talked a little bit about consumer, kind of developing the consumer capability.
Yep.
With e-commerce or omni kind of being slightly different in different businesses. What are some of the stuff? What are some of the data and analytics that you're using today?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned earlier, this is an area of obviously critical importance to our future and an area where we are investing heavily, consistent with our central to home strategy. And as I mentioned to Russ's earlier question, for me, the first part of the answer is we're investing in bringing in great new talent that has experience in these spaces and with these set of tools that can help build capability here at Central Garden and Pet. And so we've made a number of important hire decisions in areas like data and analytics, consumer insights, in digital performance marketing. In terms of tools, we're really trying to move towards more agile tools, more predictive tools, more AI-enabled tools. So these are things like obviously more customized market measurement tools, AI-led consumer testing tools. I was with another business unit a couple of weeks ago, and was really excited to see the adoption of a very different set of pricing analysis tools that we had never used before, that were AI-led, that were very quick and very low cost relative to the historic tools that I grew up with in CPG on how we test pricing, particularly for new products. So there's a lot of that going on. Social listening is an area where we're investing in, and then more trend and predictive analytics is an area we're investing in. I mean, even to bring one example on the garden side, weather plays an incredible impact on a lawn and garden consumption. And so as you think about getting into the spring season that we're in now, if you have a beautiful weekend, consumers go out to the lawn and garden centers. They're excited about buying live plants, grass seed, bird feed, whatever, chemicals, fertilizers, to then beautify their home. If you have a horrible weather and it's cold and rainy, they're not going to do that. So, one of the predictive tools we're starting to work on is around weather prediction that is geo-targeted down to the metro area to then proactively inform inventory needs, merchandising opportunities, feet on the street that weekend in that metro, et cetera. And so that's one of countless examples where I think predictive tools can be very helpful.
Are you investing in first-party data collection so my home spec versus Russ's home spec and that kind of data, or not yet?
Absolutely. And I would say early innings, KK, but I'll build on your example to say there's even opportunity in the big data world to also get through government sources, local municipality sources, an understanding of, for example, soil content at your yard, KK, that's different than Russ's yard down in Phoenix. And then understanding what your needs are to grow a beautiful lawn is very different than his. And the chance to then bring that together and provide intelligent solutions around the right fertilizer for you and the right grass seed for you. These are all opportunities before us with big data and with great analytics.
And you talked about creating an entrepreneurial business unit-led growth culture, and you got over 7,000 people. How do you do that?
Sure. Well, like any good CEO, I've got to start by saying our most important asset is our people. And as you said, we've got over 7,000 fantastic men and women. I walked you through our strategy earlier. The fifth pillar is around culture and building that entrepreneurial business unit-led culture. So what I like to say to folks is the primary organizational vector of Central Garden and Pet is and will always be, in my view, a business unit-led culture. And, I want to give our business units the empowerment, the freedom, and the associated accountability to run their businesses. I also want to ensure that our reward and recognition programs are commensurate with that. So, for example, our annual bonus program for all of our employees, 80% of that, 80% of that, is tied down to the business unit level. I always like to put reward and recognition closest to consumer and customer, closest to our BUs. There's a role for corporate, in the enterprise, and obviously we're publicly traded, one company, but to really tie that annual bonus down to the team sitting in New Jersey, sitting in Atlanta, sitting in Phoenix, running their independent business, and let them know that their actions, if they do better, they're going to get paid more, I think is really important. And then if everyone does that, the enterprise is going to win. So I think reward and recognition alignment is a key part of building that. At the same time, I would tell you, it's not a binary equation. It is not a 0-1 thing. I do think in our company, we will always be business unit led. We will have empowered, accountable business units, but there's a role to play for enterprise thinking sometimes, for scale leverage. We're knocking on the door of a $3.5 billion platform today. Clearly, there's backroom synergies, procurement, systems. Clearly, there's best practices sharing. There's leverage with the customer, our retail partner, and consumer, and some of the things we talked about, for example, digital marketing and predictive analytics. So finding that sweet spot that is predominantly business unit led and rewarding and recognizing that entrepreneurial culture, but also finding the smart ways to leverage our scale and best practices. That's the art, in my view, of a great company. And I like operating in that space. There's no science to it. Like I said, there's also not one size fits all, but it's one that I think we're really getting our arms around and trying to find that sweet spot.
Yeah, art is a good word for that, a really good word for that. Recognition, reward are highly attributable to driving the kind of successful behavior you need to be successful. Shifting gears for a little bit, high consumer interest in health and sustainability, and most companies are trying their best. How does Central address that trend, those trends?
Sure. Well, as part of our Central to Home strategy, we rolled out for the first time what we call our Central Impact Initiative, and that is, for lack of a better term, our kind of proprietary language around our CSR or ESG efforts. And I'm certainly a believer that this is, as you said, Russ, not only important to our consumers, but it's important to our customers, our retail partners. It's important to our investors. It's important to our analysts who cover us, government stakeholders, our communities in which we operate. And so it's really important. Part of that Central Impact strategy, we talked about 3 pillars. The first is around community health, the second around employee well-being, and the third around sustainability. And maybe having a quick word on each. Around community health, we operate in over 100 communities across the United States, those 24 business units. So we either have a manufacturing plant, a distribution center, or a sales and commercial office. And so, we've got a real obligation to those communities to be sure that we're good citizens and we're giving back. And we've got a couple of, I'd say, marquee partnerships that we're proud of. One is Habitat for Humanity, where, in this last year, we donated over $1 million and had employees highly engaged in that. Another on the pet side is we're very active in a series of pet shelters, everything from animal rescue shelters like ARF to ASPCA. And we're a meaningful financial and I'd say strategic partner to these. On employee well-being, certainly it started around our work around the COVID pandemic. I think part of it as well is our diversity and inclusion agenda, formed our first ever diversity council, made really investments in areas like mentorship, leadership development, and a commitment to continue to improve representation of women and people of color at our company. And then on the third is around sustainability, which I think is the heart of your question. This is an area where, quite honestly, we are beginning to collect, harness, and accelerate a number of incredible stories that are already taking place around our company. And then we're just about to launch our first ever impact report, Russ, that obviously we're going to make public in all of our filings. But some early proof points that I'm excited about. One's around ocean waste. Obviously, ocean plastic is a key area. And this last year, we recycled over 85 million pounds of ocean waste into finished products in areas like pet beds and outdoor cushions, which is another one of our business. We produced over 125 million dog bones in our dog treat and toy facility in New Jersey, all through solar power. And we've reduced over 11 billion gallons of water in our new grass seed innovation, which is far more sustainable in the applications of coating that allows grass seed to grow with 30% less water than the prior incarnation of grass seed. So we've got actually some really, I think, compelling stories to tell of efforts that have been a part of this company for many years, But quite honestly, Russ, we haven't told those stories. And I think to your question, not only consumers, but other stakeholders are interested in this space. And we want to begin to codify this and then make further commitments of improvements in the future.
That's terrific. So speaking of stories, we mentioned one of your larger brands, Pennington, a lawn product, has recently made some headlines. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it fits in? I knew you were gonna smile on this one.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm a football fan, so this one's really cool. Pennington's been around for 75 years. We just celebrated the 75th anniversary in 2020, and it's a pioneer in grass seed, and has always played a really important role in being at the forefront of really growing incredible turf for American consumers to play ball on and entertain on and roll around with the kids and the pets and so on. And so we thought it was a really perfect fit then to go in and we launched a campaign, I think is probably the one you're referencing, right around Super Bowl this year. And we called it Flip the Turf. And it was, I think it fits so well with Pennington, but it's really responding to a growing trend among football enthusiasts and football players themselves. And that is that 16 of the current 32 teams and fields in the NFL still play on artificial turf. And artificial turf is not so nice on two levels. One, on a sustainability level, Russ, to your earlier question, that fake AstroTurf ends up being rolled up every few years and put into a landfill. And Lord knows how long it takes to degrade from there. And then it gets replaced versus, a natural sustainable grass. And then the other is health and safety of football players. And so many football players for years have said, and if you've ever played contact sports or your children have had, the difference between that AstroTurf and natural grass and natural turf. And so because this was important to our consumers and I think a great fit to the Pennington brand, we launched this program called Flip the Turf. Got a couple of great NFL spokesmen like George Kittle and others to go out and advocate on this. And we created quite a buzz out there. And then if you gentlemen and others watch the Super Bowl, you'll know there was a really scary moment where OBJ, mysteriously fell to the ground in one of these, odd turf injuries. And quite honestly, that unfortunate development that happened in real time in the game only catapulted the conversation to a new level. And so, at the end of the day, as you measure these things, we got over $10 million in earned media for that Pennington Flip the Turf. And as measured by the folks that measure all the Super Bowl advertising, we actually had the highest engagement rate on social of any brand that did not run a 30-second ad on the Super Bowl. We can't afford that at this stage, so we didn't run that. But outside of that, I think we really broke through. And I think it was a nice platform that is consistent with the brand Penton Promise.
Did you get any response from the NFL? Because it was pretty direct.
It was, and we have countless NFL players that are now really, including the Players Association, that are really interested in furthering this platform. And Russ, and of course it's out there in the public forum, we have made a pledge that if any NFL team would like to flip the turf, we'll pay for the grass on the house from Pennington.
It's terrific. That's really terrific. Well, you've woven culture into most all of what you've spoken about. It's obviously important to you, and you created these set of values. You call it the Central Way. Tell us how that's helped strengthen your culture.
Yeah, I think values are so important to a winning culture, and they're really the cornerstone. They're the root of the how of the culture at a company. And indeed, as part of that new central to home strategy, one of the things we did, as I think one should do, is take a fresh look at our values. And so we had a series of amazing employee-led engagement sessions to really harvest our legacy values that differed across some of our legacy BUs, and then come up with a a coherent set of values. There's 6 of them, and I think they fit us well. It starts with we do the right thing, all about integrity and trust. We strive to be the best and ambition to be a leader in our industry. Third is we're entrepreneurial. We've talked about this hour, a cornerstone element of our culture. Fourth is we win together. So this yin and yang of, yes, you can be entrepreneurial and leverage the scale and resources of a multi-billion-dollar Fortune 800 company. Next is we grow every day, the sense of growing the business, but growing as an individual around personal growth and development. And the final is we're passionate. And that runs through every employee, so passionate about their pets and their gardens. Literally every employee, you've seen it on our website. We all have pets. We all love our gardens, and so we're passionate. So those 6 values, and you'll note everyone, 3 or 4 simple words, and they all start with we are. This notion of this is what bonds us together. And so it's really inspiring to see this take hold across our sites in signage, as well as in vocabulary, in the way we talk with one another. And I think will play an important role in sustaining a winning culture.
Tim, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful discussion. We really appreciate you taking the time to do it with us. And I personally have learned so much more about pet and lawn and the strategies that you're adopting. Good luck and congratulations on a great run so far.
Thank you, KK. Thank you, Russ. It was a pleasure to be with both you gentlemen and with IRI. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, KK, and Russ, for this amazing conversation. So many hot industry topics were touched on today. I'd like to recap a few of the things I heard. Central Garden & Pet operates in 2 industries, pet and garden, where consumers increased their spending throughout the pandemic, leading to 2 consecutive years of record results for the company. But Tim's goals for the company go beyond that and include doubling and redoubling the business in the coming years. It won't happen overnight, but in Tim's words, it will be achieved with a focus on 1 blade of grass and 1 wagging tail at a time. At the same time, and like many players in the CPG space, Central Garden & Pet has been challenged by pandemic-related supply chain pressures, including increasing commodity prices, curbed land and ocean freight, labor, and costs of labor. The quick pivots to address employee health and well-being during the pandemic, as well as supply challenges, led to deeper company assessments. Over the course of 9 months, the company developed its new Central to Home strategy, summed up in 5 C's. Consumer, specifically build and grow brands consumers love. Customer, win with retail customers across channels, including building new capabilities. Central portfolio, new strategies for existing business units, including a strong approach to mergers and acquisitions. And on that note, Tim, you mentioned 4 recent additions to the Central Garden & Pet family: Green Garden Seed Packets, Hopewell Nursery, eTailer Do My Own, and D&D. Cost, reducing costs to build margins, but also to fuel growth and make continuous improvements at scale. And finally, culture, deemed the most important to you, Tim, is attracting and retaining talent and sustaining the entrepreneurial approach of the company's 24 business units. Working as it does across both garden and pet industries, Central Garden & Pet plays with both dominant retail leaders, including mass merchants and dedicated channel leaders, as well as pure play e-com and even independents. An advantage for Central Garden & Pet is that it's also a fulfillment house for third-party producers, giving the company exposure to changing purchase patterns and products that are trending. In addition to hiring talent to build digital capabilities, Central Garden & Pet is also investing heavily in tools and technology to be more agile in activating change, utilizing more AI-enabled predictive and measurement tools, notably for pricing analysis, social listening, predictive tools like weather for targeted marketing and in-store activation, and to identify areas ripe for innovation. Tim, you also talked with great pride about your Flip the Turf campaign launched during this year's Super Bowl to encourage the 16 NFL teams that still use artificial turf to swap to natural turf to reduce non-contact injuries, as well as the negative environmental impact caused by artificial turf. To seal the deal, you're offering to bring the grass. That is well played. Finally, you talked about Central Garden and Pet's approach to getting your more than 7,400 colleagues working across 24 business units and 65 brands to work from the same playbook, the Central Way, which you summarized as: we do the right thing, we strive to be the best, we are entrepreneurial, we win together, and we are passionate. Those are values we can all embrace for future success. Tim, KK, and Russ, thank you for your time today and for this fantastic conversation. For our listeners and viewers, this recorded conversation will be available at our website, iriworldwide.com. We hope you'll take an opportunity to review our other thought leadership, including valuable reports and our dashboard of economic indicators. Have a good day.